Finding our seats, we're going to begin our program here. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization's 2023 Open House Transportation Connections from Point A to Point B. Thanks for joining us tonight, both in person and online. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Information and Outreach Manager for the Space Coast TPO. And before we get started, I'd like to just go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to participate in tonight's event. So first, for those in person, restrooms are located down the hall near the entrance. Please silence your cell phones during the presentation, and please hold all public comments for the formal public comment period after the presentation. So tonight, as I said, we have attendees in the room and we have some online joining us virtually. So at this time, we're going to review the public comment process that will occur after the presentation. As a reminder, the Space Coast TPO adheres to Title VI policy. Public comments are solicited without regard to race, color, national origin, age, sex, religion, disability, or family status. So once again, if you can hold all public comments, we will be taking them at the very end. For in-person attendees, you may fill out a speaker card if you'd like to make a public comment tonight. Our staff outside has them at the table, and then we'll be collecting them. If you're viewing online and you'd like to make a public comment, please drop it into the chat feature. And please label it public comment and include your name, email, and phone number. While we may not read every remark in the chat, as it may not be productive for the program, we will do our best to summarize any overlapping questions or concerns. All applicable submitted public comments will be read aloud during the public comment portion of the program. And as a reminder, public comments are limited to 3 minutes each. This time frame will be adhered to so that we can hear from everyone. At the end of the program, we will first take questions from our in-person attendees, and then we'll answer questions submitted online through the YouTube live chat feature. Should you have any further comments or questions after the program, our staff is extremely accessible. We're here in the room. We have some outreach tables that we'd love for you to visit, and we'd be happy to speak with you more one-on-one. And if you're joining us virtually, you can find our contact information by visiting www.sctpo.com. And now to kick us off, it's my pleasure to introduce our Executive Director of the Space Coast TPO, Georgiana Gillette. Throughout her 30 years of experience in the transportation industry, Ms. Gillette has established professional relationships with transportation leaders throughout the region and the state. In her role, she oversees regional transportation planning for 16 municipalities, the county, and has the unique opportunity to collaborate with 5 transportation modes: highways, airports, rail, a seaport, and a spaceport. As executive director, she is dedicated to developing master plans that are meaningful, implementable, and cutting edge. She passionately strives to develop and foster regional multimodal transportation projects that improve the quality of life and economic development. With over $1 billion programmed for transportation projects over the next 5 years, the TPO's vision comes to life and our future is interconnected at all levels. Please join me in welcoming Georgiana to the podium.
Well, thank you very much. That is a very nice introduction. Well, good evening. We are so happy that you have taken a little bit of time out of your evening to spend with us. But before I get started, I'd like to recognize any elected officials in the room. Do we have any members of the legislature here tonight or their representatives? Do we have any local elected officials that would like to be recognized? You can just... All right, we have Cape Canaveral, yes, and Melbourne Beach in the back. Ah, Stewart, yes, yeah. Indy Atlantic, yes. And Indian Harbor Beach, wow. So we have our beaches very well represented. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your leadership. All right, so we have a nice little presentation for you tonight, and we're going to be talking about who we are, growth and development, modes and connections, our long-term vision and planning, and we'll also talk about a few of our trending projects, our Vision Zero program, and then looking ahead, future planning projects over the next couple of years that we think you might be very interested in, and then finally how you can get involved. So you may be thinking the TPO who? Well, what is a transportation planning organization? So our TPO is comprised of 19 members, all elected officials, including all 5 of the county commissioners, a port commissioner, and 13 city council members from throughout the county. And one of the main jobs of the TPO is to identify the transportation improvements that we're going to need over the next 20 to 25 years. And then we work with FDOT and our local governments to prioritize and fund those improvements with available state and federal funds. So we carry out planning at the regional level, and it really is a shared vision for the future. We are a consensus-based decision-making body because really at the end of the day, the user doesn't care who owns the road. They just want to get to where they're going safely and in a dependable time. And so it's critical that we view transportation holistically and that we talk to each other about how to improve it. And the TPO is a forum where those discussions can take place. So as you all know, our transportation system is very unique. We like to call ourselves quintimodal. We have highways and roads, which includes cars, transit plus bike lanes, sidewalks, and trails. We also have an international airport, a seaport, and a spaceport, and then we have rail, which is our 5th mode, all which impact our quality of life. And really, Brevard's economy is largely built on and around these transportation assets. So it's important that we plan and coordinate with our modal partners. So growth and development. So, we're growing. I think you all know that very well. Florida has a population of 21.5 million, ranking 3rd among the states. By 2050, the population is projected to grow to 27.8 million. In 2021, Florida had over 122 million visitors, and this is projected to increase over 50% by 2031. 64% of those visitors arrived by vehicle. 9 out of 10 Floridians live in urban areas. 548 net new people move to Florida per day. 60% of the growth is projected to be in these 10 counties that you see there. And, although Brevard County is not one of those counties, we have over 600,000 residents. And we know that we're growing, and growth drives success, but it can also bring challenges. So let's talk about modes and connections and, the efficient movement of people and goods from point A to point B. So we have a very diverse transportation portfolio. It's critical that we ensure we have good connections to and from our ports to allow freight and passengers to use a combination of modes. The pandemic brought changes in workspace and transportation, industry disrupting mobility like connected and autonomous vehicles, plug-in electric vehicles, ride source platform, and micro-mobility are transforming how and where people move. Artificial intelligence, smart software, robots may invigorate the work strategy for the future. So the 2020s really will be defined by how government and decision makers leverage this new technology in the face of the uncertainty. But we also need to balance the growth and the needs of our communities with safety and environmental considerations and plan for our future. Best practice requires local government oversight to happen. It's important to have system continuity, compact or mixed-use communities that promote travel options for more walkable communities, and less reliance on automobiles for quality of life and sustainable communities. So now we're going to move into the next section of our long-term planning, and I'd like to invite Sarah Crom, our Senior Transportation Planner, to come up and talk about that.
All right. Good evening. I'm Sarah Crom. I'm the Senior Transportation Planner with the Space Coast TPO. So where do transportation projects come from, or how do they get started? Excuse me, sorry. Transportation planning is a bottom-up approach. We begin with our local elected officials through our governing board, which is guided by advisory committees, as well as also staff resources and the projects that we do as staff. The Space Coast TPO monitors our transportation performance through traffic counts, crash statistics, congestion levels, as well as other transportation and land use data. We then utilize our local governments to provide opportunities or request various projects through our annual call for projects. And members of the public can also submit public comment to our various plans and programs as well to make requests. We then take all of the data and the requests and we sort through them through the development of our long-range transportation plan, various master plans, and local comp plans. Eligible projects are then placed on our list of project priorities, which is annually adopted and then is utilized for state and federal funding. One of the plans developed and utilized by the Space Coast TPO is the Long-Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP. The Long-Range Transportation Plan is a required guiding document that is adopted every 5 years and has a 20-year time frame. This document establishes the vision for the transportation system, develops a needs list. It has robust public engagement, identifies various funding sources, and allocates those funding sources through the cost feasible plan. In order for a project to be eligible for various funding sources, it must be in the long-range transportation plan. It is essentially the budget and vision of our future transportation system. The Space Coast TPO's 2060 vision is defined in our long-range transportation plan. Our vision is to invest in our space, sea, and airport, to grow as a high-tech community, create more walkable and bikeable communities, develop more travel options that focus on transit, rail, rideshare, trails, and more, which will create less reliance on automobiles and access to a wider variety of housing. So how is the LRTP developed, or the Long Range Transportation Plan developed? It goes through 5 key components. There is a robust public and stakeholder involvement, the development of goals and performance measures, reviewing of future development plans in coordination with our local governments and various stakeholders. We then take those components, and that helps determine the needs of the community in order to account for all users of our transportation system. Finally, we prioritize the needs list into a financially feasible project list. The Space Coast TPO has several master plans and programs that feed into our long-range transportation plan. Those include the Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan, which it prioritizes transportation options through the development of a bicycle, trail, and pedestrian network. Another is our Complete Streets methodology. This focuses on prime locations for complete streets within our communities. Such projects include the Florida Ave in Cocoa, which you might have driven down on your way here, and Hickory Street in Melbourne. It is important that we consider all users and provide equitable access to modal choices, congestion management, and carbon reduction funding. The Space Coast TPO also recognizes that we cannot exclusively continue to widen roads. We are running out of real estate, and widening projects are incredibly costly. This is why we must look forward to Intelligent Transportation System, or ITS, through our ITS Master Plan, and coordinate with FDOT and our local traffic management centers. The application of advanced signal control and monitoring of the transportation network saves taxpayers time and money, as well as increases mobility and safety while minimizing environmental impacts. At last count, we had 484 connected signals in Brevard County. This is with close partnership with FDOT, local agencies, and we have invested millions in our intelligent transportation system over the last 8 years. You may have noticed some of these gadgets while you're out driving the roads. The eyes of the ITS system is a closed circuit TV. The video appears on the TV monitor to monitor the flow of traffic. However, it is not being recorded. Data gatherers of the ITS system is the vehicle detection system, such as loops that you might see in the asphalt, overhead detection, and these identify the speed of vehicles, count the number of vehicles, and the travel time to get from point A to point B. The nerve center of the ITS system is the fiber optic cable. This transmits all of the information gathered into our transportation management center. The Transportation Management Center is the brains of the operation. It gathers and processes all information and disseminates it to Highway Patrol, various police departments, local and state transportation centers. Brevard County's Transportation Management Center is fully funded for construction in fiscal year 2024 and will be the new home of the TPO. Our communication system has been built with the future in mind. Connected signals are the foundation to a safer, more efficient transportation for all. It will set us up for technologies for connected and autonomous vehicles. Finally, we must plan for a resilient transportation system. Florida has been rocked by natural impacts such as hurricane, flooding, and coastal erosion. In response, we have developed our Transportation Resiliency Master Plan.
Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization here with some news you can use about transportation resiliency. You might be asking yourself right now, what does that even mean? It means that whatever plans the wind, water, and wildfires might have, we are planning for that. It means that we can absorb, recover, and get better in the face of a hurricane, coastal flooding, or a wildfire. Because bouncing back is, kind of old school. Bouncing forward's really where it's at. See, our roadways and corridors connect and carry vital infrastructure that make us the economically powerful Space Coast that we are. But there are impacts on our system, and we define them as shocks and stressors. So, we're rolling out a roadmap to mitigate shocks like hurricanes and wildfires and stressors like sea level rise, and developing the tools and tactics that will make us a safer, more resilient Space Coast. Think of transportation resiliency as just one more piece to the larger puzzle of a thriving Space Coast. To learn more about our road to resiliency here in Brevard County, visit spacecoasttpo.com.
So why should you care about transportation planning? These plans and processes lead to projects, changes in our community, and develop new trends. Input from you will not only impact the transportation system now, but also the future users of tomorrow as well. It is important that our communities have a say in how our transportation funding is spent, how our culture shifts with multimodal needs, new technological advances, and what and where industries develop and grow. And with that, I will turn it back over to Georgiana to talk about some trending projects.
Thank you, Sarah. So I do want to touch just on a few of our trending projects. We have a very long list of project priorities, and they are all important in different parts of the county, but there are a few that are very high priority projects that are consistently at the top of that list. All right, so as a recap, things that drive what road projects we undertake. Connectivity is vital for a thriving metropolitan area like Brevard County. We have major employment centers and the beaches that are economic engines that depend on good access to function effectively. We're growing. Some of our roads are showing signs of stress. System performance is extremely important. We have to know where the problems are. We continually monitor the conditions of our transportation system. We have an extensive traffic count database, which we monitor congestion, crashes, and trends among all modes, not just for capacity needs. And then, of course, projects must be cost feasible, as Sarah mentioned. We build our long-range plan based on projected revenue. If we do not have the projected revenue, we can't include that project into our long-range plan. And then there's public acceptance. Gone are the days when the public would embrace a road project and view it as progress. Steering through public involvement icebergs is now a major concern for any project. So it is important our citizens are engaged throughout the process and ask questions and that we listen to each other. And on that note, I want to mention that we do have members of our Technical and Citizens Advisory Committee here in the room, and they really do represent the TPO, and that represents a very strong public involvement portion of the TPO as well. So the issue is insufficient funding. You know, highway projects are funded through gas taxes, which is really a user fee. Every time you fill up, a portion of the money is used by FDOT and the TPO to make transportation things happen. If you don't drive, you don't pay. So the state tax is indexed to inflation at 15 cents per gallon. However, the federal gas tax has not been raised since 1993, 30 years ago. Only 25% of DOT's budget comes from the federal government. We have more fuel-efficient cars, we have alternative fuel cars and electric vehicles, which don't pay any gas tax. We have rising construction and labor costs. Right-of-way acquisition is routinely more expensive than the actual construction of a project. So the reason why we're not building more is that is funding. We are constrained by our revenue. And the business model is not sustainable. You know, we need to all acknowledge that there is a problem with relying on the fuel tax as our primary source of transportation revenue. So to talk about a few of those projects that I mentioned, I'll start out by saying it can be a long road to implementation because if you go through the feasibility study and all the different phases of a project, especially if we're talking about a widening project, it can take 10, 15 years or longer to actually break ground and get to the construction phase. So it is a long road. The NASA Causeway, this 1964 bascule bridges are being replaced. I'm sure you all have heard about this in the news. And they will be replaced with a high-level fixed span. And the widening of Space Commerce Way will also begin later this year as well. These projects are critical infrastructure for space freight mobility and workforce access at our spaceport. And these two projects total $150 million. Our number one priority is the widening of Ellis Road. A picture is worth 1,000 words. If you look at this picture, you can see the St. John's Heritage Parkway at the very bottom of this picture, connecting to the new I-95 interchange. And then that connects to John Rhodes Boulevard. And then the two-lane Ellis Road is at the very top of the picture. Major bottleneck for our thriving international airport. The right-of-way phase is underway. FDOT is administering that phase on behalf of Brevard County, and it will be finalized in the fall of next year. And we now have partial funding for construction programmed in fiscal year 25-26. That begins July of 25. But we are short a considerable amount of money. So we are offering technical assistance to Brevard County to submit for a infrastructure grant to fund the shortfall. And we are hopeful that we will be successful in this venture. The beach line from east of Industry Road to the Port Canaveral interchange will be widened, and all of the bridges will be replaced except for the newest eastbound bridge over the Indian River. There will also be a multi-use trail separated by a barrier wall extending from US 1 to 401 at the port, which will really give an opportunity for pedestrian access along the corridor. So the project is in design, or you might say it's really on hold in design, but the right-of-way phase is fully funded. And at a $40 million price tag, I can tell you construction is not funded, unfortunately. But if those of you that travel the beach line heading east, you can see that traffic is continually starting to get more and more congested. But this is another critical project for our thriving port. Intersection improvements at US 192 and Hollywood and Evans in Melbourne and West Melbourne to increase capacity at the intersection by adding additional turn lanes and a sidewalk on the east side of Evans. You know, intersection improvements can really be a lot of bang for the buck. It can be done relatively reasonably priced and really add a lot of capacity on the main line. And construction will begin in around August of this year and completed around the summer of next year. And this is a project that's been on the books for a while. So I want to talk about the A1A multimodal improvements in Cape Canaveral. Very important projects for pedestrian and bicycle safety and speed management for the community. Complete streets are designed to accommodate all users with all abilities. Complete street approaches vary really based on the community's context. So this particular project includes a curb and gutter and median, typical section from George King Boulevard to International Drive, and then the realignment of the intersection at International Drive. So the intersection is fully funded for construction in 26-27, but the curb and gutter project along A1A unfortunately still needs right-of-way and construction. So this is a top priority for safety. And a lot of sections along A1A, even to the south, are in need of some attention as we try to improve safety along that corridor. We have two major widening projects in Cocoa, Clear Lake Road from Michigan Avenue to Industry and State Road 524 from South Friday Road to Industry. Both will improve capacity as well as improve safety and pedestrian improvements along both of these corridors. Clear Lake Road is undergoing a design update, and the next phase will be right-of-way acquisition. However, it is not funded. The next phase for State Road 524 widening is design. The environmental study is coming to an end, and the design phase is the next phase for this project. And these are extremely important projects for Cocoa and for our community due to the proximity of a potential Brightline station. It's imperative that we have the surface transportation improvements to support this type of development for the future. And again, as we mentioned, these projects take time, and so the sooner we can move forward with it, the better. So I'm going to just touch on Vision Zero, Taking Action Together, which is a very important program that the TPO has been working on for several years. We adopted a safety target of 0 to reflect the DOT's goal of 0 deaths and serious injuries, all traffic-related deaths. And there are 8 fatalities every single day on Florida's roadways, and 49 serious injuries every single day, meaning when I say serious injury, you're not walking away from this. It is very serious. 94% of crashes are due to human behavior. And so they're not accidents, they are preventable. And we all have a part to play in safety. You know, we are committed to help our region achieve 0. We support our local municipalities in their Vision Zero efforts through education and regional collaboration. We are very excited that 100% of our Brevard municipalities have adopted the goal of 0 serious injuries and fatalities. And, you know, we have a very robust education outreach program. We are in schools, we host many community events, and so we are very much out in the public trying to spread the word. And DOT is very engaged in this as well. You know, all projects in the DOT work program, the department considers them a safety project, meaning that even if it's a resurfacing, they look for ways to improve safety. And an example of that would be State Road 520 through the one-way pairs in the Cocoa Village area. If you've been through there, you see that the road is all torn up. Well, that is more than just a resurfacing project. It was a project that the city of Cocoa wanted to look at for a feasibility study to look how they can slow traffic down and improve pedestrians getting across the roadway to get into the village, and just to make it safer in general, because there were a considerable amount of accidents there. And so when the project is completed, it will be a very nice project so that it would be a sense of community. And so again, it's a safety project, really. And the TPO actually helped fund that project along with FDOT. So, you know, help us achieve zero. You know, be a safe road user and support road safety projects, because there are lots of different improvements that can be put into a roadway project, and be open about those type of improvements and spread the word. We all have a responsibility to improve safety. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura Carter, who is the Assistant Director of the TPO, to talk about future planning.
Thank you, Georgiana. This is the exciting part of the program, so listen up. If you weren't listening before, you need to listen now, because I'm going to go over some of the future opportunities over the next year. And these are projects we will be starting that you will be able to be involved with. All of the projects that Georgiana just presented and discussed all started with a plan at some point. So as a transportation planning organization, this is where we work the hardest in identifying our needs and making sure that we include the community needs in the future transportation plans that are actually implemented at some point down the road. So first, our transportation future. This is our long-range transportation plan. As you recall, Sarah had mentioned we are required to do a long-range transportation plan that identifies cost-feasible projects over the next 20 years. We are now going to be embarking on our 2050 long-range plan. It just started. The first item, we will be presenting and developing a public engagement plan that will identify the modes and the methods on how we will get to the locals and to you, get your information, what you would like to see us do in the future, how would you like to move around, what modes do you want to use. It's not necessarily where are all the problems, we kind of know where they are. We want to develop a vision and get the vision that is in our long-range plan a future reality. So that's going to happen over the next 2 years. It does take a lot of work. We use a lot of data, make sure that we're doing it right, but we want to make sure that it's cost feasible, and it also is going to be unique this time because we're going to be coordinating with Space Coast Area Transit and developing the transit development plan at the same time. So we'll have a coordinated long-range plan that involves not just bicycle and pedestrians, but it's also going to incorporate the transit needs over the next 10 years. That's very important and something that is new and we have not done before. So we'll be looking for all of you to participate. The next one is our Southern Brevard Trails Master Plan. If anybody has been up to the north area of the county, we've been very successful. We have had a master trails plan for Brevard County for over 20 years, and we do have the North Rail Trail, Space Coast Trail. It's got like 400 names, but I encourage anybody who has not been on the abandoned rail trail up north to take advantage of it and go see the opportunities that we have that connect us up into Volusia, and it is a part of the coast-to-coast trail system that goes all the way over to Tampa. So the Southern Brevard Trails, we're going to be having a scope of services approved at our September board meeting. It's going to be a 1 to 2 year study. It will be identifying all the trail opportunities in Southern Brevard, focusing on those areas south of Palm Bay Road. Even if you don't live down there, it may be an opportunity to have input to see how you would like to have them connected. Where would you like to see trail systems? These are not sidewalks on the side of the road. These are trail systems off-road that are safe, usable for all types of users. The next one we have is going to be in the city of Cocoa. This will be a scope that we'll be developing over the fall and be starting next spring. Dixon Road, it goes from Clear Lake Road to US 1. It's an older facility, and we are going to be looking at it as a complete street. How can we make improvements to adjust for all road users, make it more bicycle friendly, pedestrian friendly, and also those transit connections? So look forward next spring, after you're already participating in our long range plan and the South Brevard Trails Master Plan, we'll be embarking on that plan. The next one I'm going to focus a little bit more on. It is the intermodal passenger rail station feasibility study. As everybody knows, Brightline has been very busy disrupting everybody's travel plans at some point with the crossings, but they're connecting the southern part of the state over to Orlando and eventually over to Tampa. And we do know right now they do not have a stop station in Brevard County. This initiative is to identify where that stop can be, which we've already kind of done back in 2016. We did a station identification analysis that took into consideration ridership, available land, connections to destinations such as the port. Where would the best place be for a station in Brevard? And the Cocoa area was identified as the #1 location, and that is what we're going to be looking at in more detail. We're going to be looking at the vision for that station. What does it look like? Does the station become a destination? What does the land development around it look like? What are the mode connections? We need to be considering bicycle and pedestrian walkable communities in the area of a station in order for it to be successful. We need to identify partnerships, and we need to have funding, but ultimately it's going to take time. And that's where I want to make sure the expectations are there that we're not getting a station next year. As we talked about earlier and went through the planning process, everything has to go in phases, and this is no different. The station needs to be looking at the feasibility of it, what needs to be done, identifying the timeline and the funding mechanisms that can be used to implement it. And that's the red box that we're going to be starting in August. It is going to be your opportunity to provide input on what does that look like. Do we have a conference center? What kind of modes does it connect to? Where are people coming to? It is a regional and statewide connection. It's not a commuter train system. We're not getting on there as passengers and just going down day to day, taking it to work. This is a station that's going to get us to other areas within the state. So there is a different mindset and a different ridership than there would be for commuter rail that is typically funded by the government. This is a private entity, Brightline, and we need to take that into consideration when we're developing the plans of what that station looks like. We also need to design it at some point, then followed by construction. All of these phases take multiple years. But the timeline for the feasibility study that you can all participate in now and have a say in what the future looks like will take place between August of this year through February of 2025. We're going to be collecting data, we're going to be analyzing it, we're going to be identifying some ridership, looking at the land development, what kind of zoning needs to take place, multimodal uses that need to be connected to the area. This is all in the area that Georgiana had mentioned with State Road 524, 528, Clear Lake Road. What do the connections need to look like on the surface before you get on that train and go over to Orlando and Tampa and down south? And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we want to make sure that the community's involved and it's the community's vision that gets developed. So this information is going to be done through a specific public participation plan. That will what we will be developing first, identifying what methods are we going to use to gather your input. We'll be using social media. We'll probably have a website that you will be able to enter comments on. We will also be guided by a steering committee of community partners, experts in their fields. Obviously, the City of Cocoa staff's going to be involved. Hopefully, we'll definitely be coordinating with Brightline representatives, and we'll have it pop-up events. We will also be presenting to the City Cocoa Council. So this is going to be, a transparent process, and we want to make sure that everybody has the same vision, maybe not everybody the exact same, but everybody has an opportunity to really think about outside the box. This is the Space Coast. We can get a man off the Earth up into space. Surely we can figure out to get a station here to get us across the state and down south and across over to Tampa. So with that, we are working to advance transportation together. So those are the real high-level next couple of projects over the next year that the Space Coast TPO is going to be embarking on, that we'd like your participation in. Come back next year to next year's open house, and we will present what we're going over for the next year. So this is a recurring opportunity for you to come and see what we're doing over the next year. And that long-range transportation plan, make sure you're involved with that, because that's the meat of where every transportation project actually comes out of and gets implemented. So I have some notes on how we're supposed to move into this next step. If you would like to provide a comment, please make sure that you fill out a speaker card first and provide it to one of the staff. And you can also enter on the chat online or on YouTube. I believe that's the right social media. And right now I only have one card. We should have a representative from Inspire Writers Center. There is a microphone over to the right of myself. If you want to come on up and go ahead and provide your comments, that would be great. We'll be following the public comments in person by any comments that we have online that Abby will be reading.
Thank you, everyone, and I appreciate everything that you've said so far. I think it's all helpful. I want to introduce myself. I'm Malcolm Massey. I'm a 3-year resident of Brevard County at this point, so I'm relatively new. I have 2 years ago established something called Inspire Writers Center here, and we teach creative writing classes. We've had to limit some of our activities based on the way traffic moves around, and I want to address that just briefly because I love it here. When we moved here, we moved from Virginia Beach. This felt like Virginia Beach in 1975. It now, 3 years later, feels like Virginia Beach in 1980, and that's about when they lost control over it. When the city overtook the county, when they erased the green line, when the hotels overshadowed the beaches, the open spaces went away, that's when it went wrong. And I have a suggestion. Every business license and every building permit that's issued, ask for a one-page transportation impact statement. Take that data, whether it's 50 cars a day, 100 cars a day, 3 semi-trucks, whatever it's going to be, pass it through college students, pass it through the agency that Sarah has mentioned in her planning. This information may already be gathered, but gather that information. If it's enough of an impact, place a charge. Let that charge go to help fund. And keep track of it so that we can know what's going on, so that if we need to, we can hold back a little bit. We can limit just a little bit. I really don't know of any other way to do it, and this is based on years of observation, but it's simple survey and analysis. Sarah already has the tools, I feel certain. I feel strongly enough about this, I would be willing to volunteer to help see it happen, and I thank you for your time.
No, never mind. Is there anybody else who would like to make a public comment? Oh, we have another one.
One here.
Pamela Shield? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Pamela Shield. I manage a farm on Jones Road in Melbourne. There's only nature between Lake Washington and the farm, and east of me is I-95. Long-term planning goes to environmental, goes to funding, goes to construction, and it can happen from one budget cycle to the next. So that's why I wanted to address this meeting tonight, because next year it's going to literally be a new road as a priority project, I feel, because it deals with evacuation from Lake Washington, and it's an alternative evacuation route called Washingtonia Extension. It is a new 4-lane, perhaps 5 lanes, perhaps with a train down the center someday, perhaps with a multimodal transportation hub someday. If you look at the long term, they're developing the Wild West of I-95, which includes dozens of deer, armadillos, alligators, and tortoises. So I just wanted to bring up 2 things. Safety, because when the trees come down adjacent to the interstate, they're Australian pines. You'll see them at exit 183. There is going to be increased flooding and the danger of deer traversing I-95. That's a safety hazard. You talk about target 0, hit a deer going 75 miles an hour. It often leads to fatalities and serious injury. Secondly is the protection of the environment. There is nothing between I-95 and Lake Washington, my little farm. But I'm concerned for the animals. I'm concerned for some of the high-value property owners along Lake Washington and Washingtonia. I believe there needs to be a barrier wall, and I think it needs to be discussed in environmental. I think it needs to be considered before the engineering is done, and the design is done, and the funding is done, and they go, oh no, we can't do it. It needs to be 17 to 20 feet tall. It needs to prevent animals from getting onto the new extension, a north-south 5-lane adjacent to I-95. And it needs to be sound deadening, because right now it sounds like Daytona 500 along the interstate there. So I think it's a great idea to have evacuation alternatives, but I think it needs to be done safely, and I think the environment also needs to be protected.
Thank you. Next, we have Larry, and I do not want to butcher your last name. Is it Lello?
Is that all right? Okay, 3 minutes, great. First one is, as Georgiana, we know each other. I did a stint in transportation planning, and it is quite an amazing system, but enough about that. The question on the federal gas tax, when was that last raised? The 15 cents, yeah.
Well, the state gas tax is 15 cents, and
Okay,
it is indexed to inflation, but the federal
Okay.
gas tax is 18.3, I believe.
It's
and
never been changed since?
30 years.
30 years.
Yes.
Doesn't sound too smart to me.
They are discussing it in Washington, is
yeah.
my understanding.
And especially given the increase in the mileages, of course, let alone inflation, and the other issue of the EVs that are on the road that aren't, they're basically riding on the road for free. Okay, having said all that, so there's an enormous funding gap on these projects. It just seems so incredibly enormous that we're probably not going to see these for many, many years. So if we're not going to cover it this way, I mean, it just seems like it's just mostly hopeful wishing, like State Route 528 or the Ellis project. The gap between what we have and what potentially is available right now just it seems incomprehensible to get there.
It does seem, it seems hopeless at times when you look at these very large costs of projects. And the other issue is we're really competing against, I think, Central Florida. You know, they have I-4. You know, there's a lot of very large projects that we are competing against. However, you know, Florida has one of the largest transportation budgets in the country. I mean, we spend more money on transportation. We have an amazing system. We have amazing infrastructure and bridges. But due to the growth, it still isn't enough money. And so I think we're definitely in a better position, and I think that looking at some of the US DOT grants in this latest infrastructure bill is something that the Florida DOT is doing extensively. There have been a lot of federal grants that Florida has received quite a few. Traditionally, Florida's not done well, but apparently over the last 2 to 3 years, Florida has done extremely well. So there are some things that are really happening. And if we can, the governor had the Move Florida Forward projects, which it was not completely funded, but there was some very large, high-priority projects were recently funded. None in Brevard, unfortunately. However, if we can get some of these major projects taken care of, perhaps that will free up some additional funding in the future. So I think we're heading in the right direction, Larry, but I do think you bring up a very good point. We have some challenges.
And finally, as citizens of Merritt Island are very concerned, as we've talked about the intensity of traffic on Courtney, it's just really become so serious. I had a man walk into my office last week, and his son was killed. There was this, and, it was unnecessary. But you see so many crazy things happening on Courtney, and what can the citizens of Merritt Island do to maybe move something up the list to get at least the medians in there or something like that? Or we as an agency, yeah.
Sarah, do you want to take that?
Is it on? Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know. FDOT recently completed an access management study along Courtney. We're reviewing it. We're being advocates of the project. It's on I believe it's number 6 on our draft list, 6 or 7 on our draft list of project priorities. So it is very high up there, but
That's good.
Keeping the conversation going so it doesn't get lost.
So is that important?
Is very important. And
Okay.
so being an advocate for your project, having your elected leaders be advocates for your projects, and it's sitting on my desk, and we're gonna keep trying to work on that, on getting the access management implemented.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Next, we have Greg Stoll.
Yeah, my name is Greg Stoll, citizen of Cocoa, Florida. I have 1 comment and 2 asks, please. First, I'll give you the easy one is the comment. After rebuilding several launch control rooms, I certainly hope the Traffic Management Center, with how many people are coming to us every day, has room to grow. Now for my asks. The first one is a fairly easy ask. It's on your slide 23, hurricane evacuation education. I was recently made aware of a plan by FDOT to use certain roads, the shoulder, for opening up a 3rd lane for evacuation. So obviously here we are, beginning of hurricane season, couple of high pressures out there, low pressures out there, and let's try and make sure the people who need to leave, and the people who don't, batten down the hatches. My last ask is a little bit more specific. It's on slide 13, and for me, it ties directly to regionally significant Project 5, which is a widening project from Michigan Avenue around the corner to Industry Road in Cocoa, which is currently reopened for redesign. And my ask would be on these FDOT stormwater retention areas, I would like to see some trees and maybe landscaping included in those plans. A lot of times I see these retention ponds of just bare grass. I have noticed some really nice retention ponds out in Vieira that they include trees and landscaping on. And if you're going to have public right-of-way, we should be able to make it aesthetically pleasing and environmentally beneficial. And that's it. Thank you all.
That's all the cards we have for those in the room. Do we have anybody online?
I just did a last call for any virtual attendees. If they had any comments, I'm seeing none as of right now. We do have the opportunity, if you think of something after tonight's event, you still have the ability to submit a public comment, and I'll review that shortly here.
So we want to go over.
Or now.
Or now?
Yes. So tonight's event was in conjunction with the development of our 2024-28 Transportation Improvement Program. This is available for public review and comment until June 30th, and then it will go to our governing board for adoption on July 13th. And there are multiple ways that you can make a comment. You can visit the TIP page on our website at www.sctpo.com. There's a public comment portal there. You can email us. You can call us. There's multiple ways that you can make a comment. So just wanted to let the crowd know that here and also online. And then other ways that you can stay connected to the SCTPO, we are all over social media on our platforms. We also have a robust website as well if you want to learn more about us. And then I also just wanted to make sure that you visit our tables tonight. Our staff is here. We'd love to speak more with you one-on-one if you have specific questions. We have our partners here tonight for outreach. We have FDOT District 5 Brevard Ops is here, sharing some awesome safety outreach things. We have our 321 Transit partners in the room that could talk more with you about routes and how to get connected and how to learn how to take that bus. We have a great system here. And then we also have our own safety and education outreach table here. We have some fun games over there. We'd love you to stop by. And then behind us, we have some maps that are for the list of project priorities, and Sarah will be over here if you have any questions about those. So we just want to conclude by thanking you for being here tonight. Again, we're very accessible. Please reach out to us if you have any further questions or comments. Otherwise, we'll conclude for the night, and we welcome you to come and speak to us. Thank you so much.